Okay, as promised, I wanted to spend a little bit of time telling you about my trip to Abidjan, Brazil to visit with John of God. So, just to give you a little bit of background, I've been on my spiritual journey for about 7 years now. And since that time, one of the greatest paths that I have discovered is the meditation path or the path inward, which helps me to connect with what I call my inner guru. So, as I've developed that practice of meditating, what I've learned to do is kind of throw out there questions during or before or during my meditation, just open ended questions like, what is the next best move for me to make? Or what kinds of things can I do to improve my spiritual relationship or my connection with my higher self or with source energy? So, a lot of times when I go into meditation, I will do that. I'll just kind of throw that question out there. And what I found is that as I've deepened my practice, I get the answers often while in meditation or shortly after meditations. So sometimes that answer comes in the form of a voice or some knowing, a really strong sense of knowing that something is something that I ought to do, or I'll feel very propelled forward in a particular direction through my meditation. Other times I get answers that come from a particular thing showing up two or three different times from a different place. So a lot of times when something shows up in meditation, I'll kind of say, sounds like something I might want to do, but can you give me some indication or some clarity? And generally I'll say, if that shows up two or three times from different some from different sources or different places, then I'll pretty much know that that's something that is worth me spending my time and energy on. And so it's something like that is how I got started with my connection with John of God. About 5 years ago, I was in meditation and it kind of just popped up. I asked the question, I like to do a spiritual journey or take some type of spiritual vacation or event every year. So often I'll just throw out there while in meditation, can you show me what is the next best thing for me in terms of my spiritual growth and development? And when I did it this particular time, about 5 years ago, the notion of John of God showed up. And that was kind of interesting to me because I hadn't thought about John of God for many years. I actually had heard about him a couple decades ago, but it was in a negative way. It was I was in a church, and the idea behind what John of God does, which is channeling healing entities, seemed kind of demonized back then. It was really scary concept and something that we just wouldn't have done way back then. But it showed up again in my meditation about 5 years ago. And then shortly thereafter, Ram Dass, who is one of my most favorite Upagurus or mentors, and his protege, Wayne Dyer, who I've read his books and I've met him personally and had the pleasure of knowing both of them actually personally. I found out about John of God and I heard about what he had done for Wayne Dyer and that he had healed his leukemia. And that was pretty fascinating for me back 5 years ago. And shortly thereafter, I was dating somebody whose brother had gone to see John of God. And he connected me with Heather Cummings, who is his personal translator, or the connection that John of God makes to the English-speaking community for the most part. And she hosts tours to go and visit with John of God in Abidjan, Brazil, at a site called healingquests.com. So I connected with Heather through that. And then I got a third confirmation when I read about Oprah and the fact that Oprah Winfrey had actually gone to see John of God as well, and that there was all kinds of information on YouTube about her trip out there to see John of God. So once that showed up and kind of kept feeling like it was showing up in my life over and over again, I felt the urge to go. And so I scheduled a trip to go 4 years ago. And as it turned out, I had just met Rob about a week before I left for this trip. So the idea behind a trip to Abidjan to meet John of God is to come up with 3 things that you would like help with in your life. And for many people, that's a physical thing. He has actually healed thousands of people from cancer and vision challenges and kidney stones and hernias and all kinds of just amazing, inexplicable things that he's done. There's a physical healing that you can request, or you can request things like spiritual healing or relationship healing, or maybe some mental or emotional challenges that you're having. He's healed depression before. So there's a whole host of things that you can choose to ask for healing on when you go visit John of God. The three things that I chose 4 years ago when I went, since I didn't really have any physical ailment of any kind, my first choice was spiritual development. I was relatively new on my spiritual path, was doing deep meditations and really finding bliss and joy and peace with this newfound spiritual awareness that I was getting. And so I was asking for more of that. I really wanted to continue to grow spiritually. One of the things that makes me happier than anything else in my life is being able to serve others. I'm truly an acts of service kind of person. And so I know that I need to do my work first. But once that work's done, man, I'm always looking for ways to get out there and share the things that I've learned and help other people to grow and to get through the challenges that they encounter in life. So my first ask of John of God 4 years ago was to have spiritual development, or to be able to grow in that regard. Secondly, I wanted some financial abundance. I had not really had much in my life in terms of financial wealth. And I kind of had a limited perspective on what it meant to be abundant or to live an abundant life. And so I asked John of God to open the way for me in that way and to help me experience more abundantly life. So my friends, years ago were getting designer clothes, and they all seemed to have nicer things than I did. And I always kind of felt like I really wanted to experience some of that in my life. So that was my second thing that I asked for. And then third, since I had just met Rob and I had been single for 14 years prior to that, I was really asking if he was the one. And if he was, if John of God would provide a blessing for our relationship. So those are my three things that I went off to Abidjan, Brazil for 4 years ago in my first little adventure to see John of God. And having done that, I can look back now 4 years later and see that all three of those things happened for me. So spiritually, there's just no question. My meditations have been deeper and deeper, and I've truly discovered that meditation is my path inward. That is the thing that helps me touch into my higher self, or to source energy. And it's been such a gift, because it really has been my guiding principle over the last 4 years, is just to really look inward for those answers when I'm really stumbling on something and trying to figure out what's my next best move in any life situation. I've certainly been blessed in many ways from a spiritual perspective. And I just feel this amazing sense of inward peace from having made that continual journey inward to really connect with God and with my higher self. The second thing I asked for, financial abundance, kind of came in a different way. Usually when you think that somebody's going to kind of give you your three wishes, or they're going to give you something like financial abundance, you kind of think it's going to happen like in the form of winning the lottery, or maybe getting promoted, or something along those lines. And it's not always how it happens. And I'll get back to that in a minute. But that brings me to Rob. I had just met Rob a week prior to going to Brazil. And I had asked for John of God's blessing, or the entity's blessing, on that relationship back 4 years ago. So now, 4 years later, Rob and I have been married for 2.5 years. And that isn't without challenges. Let me just be honest about that. Rob and I got married at 50 years old, and we both brought a host of, just baggage stuff from our previous life. And we've had lots of bumps and bruises along the way of trying to figure out how to make those two lives kind of blend and intertwine with each other in a way that serves both of us. But let me just tell you, he is my very best friend. And I'm so grateful that we have this time that we can spend together, that I have a partner to travel through life with and to grow with. And so that was definitely answered. The idea of being blessed and having our relationship blessed, there's no question that we're continuing to get that. In terms of abundance, the way that I obtained the abundance was in our getting married. We combined two incomes. And when we did that and we started working as a team, I got to enjoy a much higher quality of life than I had ever had before. So, you have to kind of keep in mind that when we ask for things, we don't always get them the way we think we will. But often in retrospect, when you look back, you find out that you really did get it, that you really did get the things that you asked for. And it's very much the way that I feel about my first trip to see John of God. But 4 years later, life has moved on and I've gone further down the road. And of course, there's new stressors. And, now I've picked up some physical challenges. I've got some disc degeneration in my neck that creates some challenges for me. And so, in deciding to go back to see John of God this past couple of weeks, I created a new list of 3 things. And the first thing on my list was my neck, to really get some help with this challenge that I've got with my neck. And it shows up in the way of, really decreased mobility in my neck, so less flexibility. And what happens is I often have a hard time sleeping because I can't get comfortable. And I'm tossing and turning and sometimes taking the occasional tramadol to sort of stunt that pain a little bit and help me get some sleep. So, I like to sleep on my stomach once in a while, and I just couldn't turn my head far enough to be able to do that. So I had that as my first request this time through. And my second request, again, was just, continue to help Rob and I, some clarity in how we can really work through some of our own personal challenges and help each other grow and deepen the love and passion and the desire that we have for each other in our relationship. So I asked for that as my number 2 question. And thirdly, of course, as always, it's in there somewhere, is increased spiritual development. And primarily, how can I become my best self so that I can then go out and serve the community and serve the world and bring my gifts to the world in a way that would be helpful for them, because that's just something that has always been important to me. So those are the 3 things that I went to John of God with this past 2 weeks. So to give you a little flair for what happens when you go to see John of God, it's a beautiful little town in Abidjan, Brazil, south of Brasilia. And I went with Heather Cummings, again, healingquest.com. And she is just the right-hand man of John of God. I mean, you just can't get a better experience in Abidjan than being with Heather. So she is his personal assistant. So you talk to her and you let her know what your 3 questions are, your 3 challenges or healing requests. And then she takes you before John of God and translates that to him, and then helps you know what it is that he's advising during your time there. So to give you a little bit of the lay of the land, I'll probably say a lot of things that, may not even resonate with you. What's interesting about this kind of an experience is the old thing that is said, to he who has been there before, no explanation is necessary. And to he who hasn't been there, none is possible. It's so hard to wrap your words around what happens in that type of an environment, in the spiritual environment of the Casa of John of God. It's kind of like taking a picture of the Grand Canyon. You take it from all different angles, but it just doesn't capture what you feel when you're there. So keep that in mind as you're listening to sort of some of the things that I experienced there. So you see John of God, you're there for 2 weeks. You get to be in front of John of God Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of each week. The other days are mostly just integrating what's going on and, just giving yourself some quiet time and some meditation time to assimilate all the healing that is happening in this beautiful place. So there are things like crystal beds. Sometimes you get prescribed a crystal bed, which is kind of like a tanning bed. You lay on it and it's got 7 quartz crystals. And each of those crystals reflects a color of your chakra system. And the intention of laying in a crystal bed then is to align your chakra system. So to keep you in perfect alignment so that, again, you can connect with that source deep inside of you, that higher source, the thing that's really running the show, above and beyond our physical selves and our physical being. So there are chakra beds or crystal beds that you can go and lie in. And the experiences that I've had in these beds are just so profound. Much of my neck healing seemed to happen in those crystal beds. And what I mean by that is you're laying in this bed and I can feel these prickly things all around my neck and my scalp and opening up my throat and just opening my heart. And all these things are going on that I'm not doing it. I mean, I'm not making it happen. And yet there's all of these feelings of prickles and sensations going on while I'm in the crystal bed. And as a result of all of that work that was done over 2 weeks on my neck, I haven't taken any pain medicine. The range of motion in my neck and my head and my shoulders is so much more than it was before I left. I'm sleeping so much better. So already, I mean, I can tell you that the healing on my neck has been going on since I got there. And it's continuing to get better and better all the time. So that request was fulfilled almost immediately once I was there, primarily through the crystal beds and some in my dreaming at night. You have crazy dreams every night, it seems, when you're there, and messages that you might get. 4 years ago, I was visited in a dream by my mom. And I had had some challenges with my mom and feeling like I just never was good enough for her, that I never really rose to the standard that she wanted me to rise to. And in a beautiful way, she visited me in a dream while I was in Abijana and basically told me that what I did for her was enough. That all of my efforts, that she received them and she acknowledged them, and that was more than enough for her. It was such a beautiful clearing for me and a beautiful way to open my heart and let go of some of those challenges that I had about not being enough for her. Another thing that goes on, so the day that you go in to see John of God, you get in a long line and there's thousands of people there wanting to see him and hoping to be healed by him in some way. And they're all in a line and they go through this room where John of God is sitting with their translator, or there's many Brazilian people there who speak Portuguese. We're all waiting in a line, and as you go through the line, there's this thing called the current. And the current is where there are just rows and rows and rows of other people, those of us who aren't in line, who are waiting there and meditating. And it's a loving kindness meditation that we're doing while we're sitting there and holding the energy up for John of God to do his work, for him to be incorporated by these healing entities that are truly healing just thousands of people on a regular basis there. So as you walk through, you see these people with these beautiful intentions and their eyes closed, who sit there 3-4 hours sometimes more, while John of God is doing his healing work for these people that have come to visit him. And not only are these meditators holding up the current or holding up the energy in the room, but we're also being served when we're doing that job. So as an example, my first husband, Mark, died of colon cancer years back at a very young age. And I had been struggling a lot because we had gone through a divorce just a few years prior to his being diagnosed with cancer. And so I had spent years just kind of blaming myself and feeling incredibly guilty that, somehow I had brought on this stress or this cancer that he had because of the divorce. And I hadn't opened my heart up to anybody else in any other relationship because I was just so weighed down with this guilt that I felt for having done that in our relationship. And while I was in the current, I experienced, and I'm meditating at this point, I experienced Mark's presence coming to me in my meditation. And it was kind of beautiful the way that it happened because my eyes were closed and I felt this hand grab a hold of my hand. And he leaned in, and in this voice, he said, "It's time for you to let somebody love you." And the beautiful thing about that was that when Mark and I were going through our challenges, he used to say that the song Desperado had been written for me. And there is a line in that song that says, "You need to let somebody love you before it's too late." And I hadn't thought about that song in, decades, since our divorce. And here it was in the meditation room, in the current room. Here he was telling me that I needed to let somebody love me right at the time that I was asking for this blessing on myself and Rob. So, I immediately dissolved into tears, and such beautiful emotional openings happen here in Abijana that I was so blessed and so grateful for that. And so healing comes in so many different ways while you're there. It's just so profound. And this time wasn't any different. I experienced such amazing healings on every level. My heart just felt like it broke wide open while I was there. And all I could think of was, to just stay open and stay vulnerable and be willing to step through the fire and step through the hard things and to stay with my practice. That was a real big message that I kept getting through my meditations. But so I had my neck obviously worked on, and I feel much better each day from that. The second thing that I had asked about with a deeper relationship with Rob and I, and to help us through some of the challenges that we were having, it showed up in a confirmation that I need to do my work, that my peace and happiness in life happens right here. It doesn't have a lot to do with what Rob does. So the message seemed to be step into my power, that I am a powerful being, and that I have these abilities to heal myself, that it all has to start here, and that it's going to happen through that meditation practice, through going inward and listening for those higher, that inner guru or that higher self coaching me and letting me know what my next best move is. And it was such a beautiful thing to be liberated from Rob's stuff, to know that I don't have to figure that all out. All I need to do is my work and become my best self, and my answers are all right there. So what a beautiful answer to a request that I had. And then the third thing, the spiritual growth. 4 years ago when I went, a lot of work was being done in my throat chakra, actually, on this feeling that I didn't have a voice in my life. And that I went after that 4 years ago and wrote my book. I wrote my memoir in a weekend. I channeled 100 pages of my memoir. But it was kind of like a cathartic thing. I just kind of spit out all the things that I'd been through in my life and all the things that led to my awakening. And it wasn't very pretty. I mean, I've got a lot of things that had happened in my life. A lot of my life story is not very pretty. I went through bankruptcy, and I, found myself in jobs that were just awful. And the ways that I beat myself up and allowed others to beat me up was not very pretty. And so I had written this book, but I just didn't feel like I could publish it. I didn't feel like it was going to help anybody else. I knew it helped me to write it, but I couldn't figure out how to share my story with the world in a way that would help others. So it had been sitting on a shelf for about 3 years. And while I was there this past 2 weeks, while I was in a crystal bed, I experienced this incredible download of information on how I could write my book, how I can take snippets or stories from my previous life and then sort of give you the overarching theme or lesson that I learned, or what I was being shown, or kind of how life had been happening for me and not to me. How these things were actually gifts that brought me along my path. And I'm so excited now to sit down and write that book, to show others how the things that we go through in life are happening for us. And that if we sit back in the witness chair and look at it from a distance, you really get a clear vision of what it's all about. So that was the gift that I received from a spiritual perspective. Now I get to come home and really write this book that I've been waiting to write, that I've wanted to write for, almost a decade now. So I'm inspired to do that. I'm also really, really inspired to dig into this meditation course that I'm doing and really start helping people learn how to do exactly what has been so helpful for me, to slow down that outside noise and realize that all of your help is right here. And the challenge is just figuring out how to get there. The challenge is getting really good at listening for that higher voice or that inner guru and listening for your answers. So I'm really excited to come back and get started doing that in this group, to really push everybody to open up and listen and learn how to do that and apply that in their lives. So moving forward, I just want to kind of remind you that if you go to my website at peggyzielinski.com or in my Facebook group, Mindfulness Practices for Major Life Events, you'll be able to tap into just a little PDF file. It's a free gift that I'm offering that just kind of gets you started on your path to meditation. It's called 5 Smart Tips to Quieting Your Restless Mind. I would recommend download that and take a look at that to get your practice started. And then I'm going to also be offering a free webinar. I've got a webinar coming up next Tuesday night, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the evening. And I'm going to be talking about that. It's called Catching Your Breath. And it's a more in-depth way of discussing how you can start really applying this meditation practice into your life, especially when things get rough. When you're going through the storms of life. Somebody's been diagnosed with an illness, or somebody's dying, or you've lost a family friend, or you're going through divorce, or you've lost a job, or foreclosure. Those things that really shake you up. This is the way that you can get calm and go inward and get some of those answers on what it is you need to be doing next. So make sure you mark your calendar for this. It's called, what is it called? I just told you. Catching Your Breath. And it's next Tuesday night, July 18th at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'll be posting a link in my group as well so that you can register for that. And I will be speaking live to you and really answering your questions on how you can get that practice started, how you can start doing what I've been doing, going inward for your answers. Because we really do have control of that. It's the one thing in our lives we can do. We can go inward for our own answers. All the things outside of ourselves are out of our control. So I'm really excited to do that. I'm also putting together a boot camp, a meditation boot camp course that I'll be offering down the road as well for people who really want to take this practice and really make it a reality and make it sustainable in your life. So stay tuned to that. I hope you enjoy the information on John of God. I've got so many wonderful trips and things that I've done in the past and that I'm going to be doing in the future that I just want to share with you as they come up, to share the lessons that I'm learning and the ways that my practice is continuing to just open me up to new ideas and new opportunities. I've already planned to go back to Abhijanya next year at June. Rob and I are going to go together next year and really deepen our relationship together, and also just our own healthy relationship with ourselves. So I hope that's helpful for you. I hope you found that interesting to learn a little bit about the John of God experience. And please don't hesitate to reach out. If you have somebody who needs to be healed, who you would like their picture presented in front of John of God, be sure to reach out to me. He's also going to be at the Omega Center in October. So if you're anywhere in that part of the country and you'd like to experience firsthand being in his presence, it's just, I can't even tell you the words. I mean, words just seem to bring it right down way below what it was in true experience. So if there's anything that I can do for you or any questions I can answer for you, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Be active in the group and help the others as well, because I'm sure they may have similar questions. So I'm looking forward to being of service to you, of sharing my experiences and my knowledge of meditation with you and helping you to deepen your own practice. Thanks again for watching, and please stay active in the group. We need you there.